Hey everybody, my name is Michael Scarabino. I'm a singer and I play guitar and piano in a rock band called Quiet. And in this video, I'll be talking about a device called the Mastermind GT by RJM Music Technology. This is a MIDI controller with capability that is off the charts. We can customize every single button and page to control parameters and settings for so many types of MIDI devices, whether it be profiling amps, guitar pedals, consoles of all types, stage lights, you name it. As long as it has MIDI capability, the Mastermind GT can control it. And the best part about it is that we may program it to suit any workflow that we need in any kind of environment. I'd like to begin by introducing the Mastermind GT and going over some of its capability, its functionality, and some ways that I like to use it, and then I will give you a personal review on its performance. So RJM Music Technology is a California-based company, and they have designed countless devices that are used by musicians of all levels, stemming from the independent artists all the way up to the major label acts who tour around at stadiums, arenas, and festivals to their crowds of hundreds of thousands of people. I first heard about RJM back in 2017 through the band Muse. Matthew Bellamy and Christopher Wolstenholme both have the GT22 versions of the Mastermind, and my first impression of them was, well, my mind was blown actually. I follow the band on Instagram, and someone posted on their Instagram story of Matt Bellamy's pedal board, and I saw this very lit up device with so many colors, and some of these buttons read things along the lines of Kemper Fuzz, Muff Amp, or some kind of whammy pedal or ZVEX Fuzz, Phase 90 stuff, and that really got me thinking, because this is some kind of MIDI controller obviously, but how is it that you could have devices that are from a totally different manufacturer appearing as a name on a pedal board like that? So that really opened my mind to what MIDI controllers are all about when it comes to guitar and bass effects rigs. So I researched what the device was, and I eventually found my way to RJM's website, and the rest is history. I've been using the GT22 since 2018, and I picked up this GT10 not a long time ago. The difference between these two devices is the number of buttons. The GT22 has 22 buttons, of course, so then this has 10 buttons, being the GT10. They also designed a GT16 with 16 buttons, of course, which is amazing because every artist that has their own rig and puts together their needs may not need the highest capacity amount of buttons available on a controller like this. So you can build your rig and you can get one of these to suit your needs with your workflow. So I use the GT22 for my band Quiet on all of our live performances, and then on the other hand, I use the GT10 for Quiet's practice sessions. I have a B rig that I have in our rehearsal space, so this is a great way to control that. However, I do a couple of other projects with it. I'm a stage tech for a metalcore band called Farsight, which is based here in New York. So I like to use this to work their Ableton session and their backing tracks. Meanwhile, I'm also managing their in-ear mixes on stage. One other thing that I use the GT10 a lot for is that I perform acoustic gigs regularly every week. So I have a certain routine that involves using backing tracks and playing to a click to give a certain atmosphere to the audience. So like I do for Farsight, I use the GT10 to control those backing tracks. So essentially I use this thing as a remote control just as much as I use it to access a bunch of guitar effects. You might even be a producer and want to have a certain controller like a fader port that can provide a lot of shortcuts for the buttons and controls in your DAW. The GT can serve that purpose too, and in fact I even have a file for that as well. I should mention now that this is going to be the first part of a long series that I have planned of many videos talking about these devices, and I'm excited to demonstrate to you many tricks that I have learned after a few years of using the GTs. And if you are someone that owns one of these as well, This is a great way to help you get even more out of your use with them. Or if you're someone who's not really familiar with the Mastermind, I'm very excited to show you what these things can do, because it really is amazing what kind of control they can provide. And one thing that I love to say about this thing is that I like to program the Mastermind to be my mind on the stage. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and break into the system of the GT and give you an idea of what kind of functionality it has and what it can do for you. So like I mentioned before, this is the GT10 version of the Mastermind. It has 10 buttons. Let's go ahead and enter the menu by pressing the 2 black buttons beneath the display screen here. So each button opens a whole can of worms with endless possibilities of settings, starting from adding many devices that you can control. And in my effect rig, I control devices like Axe Effects 3, a pedal looper, a whammy pedal and a chaos pad, and I also have some additional stomp pedals connected to this looper that I can also control the engaging and bypass of in their channels. With the possibility of having preset buttons on the Mastermind, I can call up whatever presets I need from Axe Effects and the whammy pedal and the chaos pad whenever I need to. I can customize each page with buttons with different colors and certain actions and MIDI commands so that I can call up whatever I need from these devices at any point during the show. When we go to edit buttons, we have the possibility of accessing any of these buttons, and we can change things like the name of them, the action that they command, such as a program change, or a continuous control toggle, or some various internal system settings of the GT that you can perform, such as pressing a button and it'll not only activate a certain preset, but maybe you might want to go back to a certain page when you're coming from another page so that you can have immediate access to the buttons you want during that song. And then of course, you can arrange these buttons in any way you want. You can fly them to any end of the device that you like, whatever is comfortable for you, and in my opinion, whatever makes you have to think as less as possible on the job of performing. One really great feature that I love about the Mastermind is that when it comes to adding devices that you want to control, RJM has tons and tons of different pre-programmed settings for devices like Kemper, Axe Effects, Align 6 Helix, and so many more devices from various companies such as Avid, Boss, Cooper Effects, Jackson Audio, Gibson, Eventide, and Pictronics. The list goes on and on. So that's really amazing because once you go to add a device, it can save you so much time and hours from having to MIDI map things to work the way you need it to. So if we were to slap on a device right now like Axe Effects, it'll load default buttons like presets and scenes and many different buttons that we call instant access buttons that allow us to turn on and off certain effect blocks within a preset. And perhaps you'd like to have direct access to your tuner or tons of other things. Or perhaps if you're running a Kemper, you can set default buttons when you pull up the settings so that you can access the tuner, or maybe you'd like to go up between banks and access different presets. It's almost like having your Kemper remote or the FM3 from Fractal, only that you can actually customize where you'd like everything to be. But in addition to that, if you're someone who likes to run multiple devices that are apart from each other, we now have the ability to call up presets and different actions at the same time, as if it's all one and the same under one control center. Hence why I think it is called the Mastermind. So let's back out of this real quick and take a look at some other good things that we can do in the GT. If we click on MIDI settings, you can see that there are various different settings that are MIDI related with the device that you have direct control over changing, whether it be the channel or certain features that allow you to send or tell it to not send certain program changes at will. As you can see, we have access to pages of different MIDI settings that we can tweak to accommodate for however we need this thing to behave. Now if we hit the next page, We can see that we can control other settings such as things going on in the display, like your brightness or contrast with the buttons, which is awesome depending on what kind of environment that you're working in on stage, or perhaps you're a tech that's backstage and you don't need the buttons to be ultra bright. We can create songs out of the presets that we have stored in the GT, and then we can eventually turn all of those songs into a grouped set list. The Mastermind has a set list feature that allows us to build song lists for whatever performances we're doing, or perhaps you'd like to keep all of your songs in certain lists and categories. So this is just scratching the surface of all the things that we can do with the GT. There is so much more to go, and I'm very excited to take you into depth on many of these things in future videos. One other thing that I'd like to go over with you on the device are the connectors on the rear panel. So if we have a look, we'll see that we have the capability of powering the GT with a power supply. But not only that, if we jump over to the MIDI connectors over here, you can see that it's not just compatible with a standard 5-pin cable. However, we can have a 7-pin MIDI cable that allows us to phantom power the GT from other devices. RJM designs their own phantom power box where you can hook up a 7-pin MIDI cable from the GT's MIDI out to the phantom power box, and then from then on you can hook up a standard MIDI cable that can run to your MIDI chain or your splitter box. And then we have another output for the power supply, and this is great because if you get a nice long cable that runs back to your effect rack, you can leave the phantom power supply rack mounted and you don't have to worry about reaching an outlet or a certain power box nearby on stage. Next up are a couple of TRS inputs that allow us to connect external switches to the GT. So in case you have one of these devices and you'd like to just add on a few more buttons to give a little more full control for whatever you need to work with, you have the option to do that. Next up are a couple of ports for USBs. One of them is a Type B connector that will allow you to connect the GT to your computer so that you can hook it up to the Mastermind GT Edit app, which is a very great program. You can download it on RJM's website for free. And this allows you to tweak every single setting going on in the device, and it gives you a more convenient and visual look of what's going on in the system. The other USB port is a Type A connector that's meant to work with thumb drives. So whenever RJM releases a firmware update, you may load the file on that thumb drive, and then when prompted, you can hook it up to the device and it'll run the firmware update. The last group of connectors that we have on the rear panel are jacks for expression pedals. So if you're someone that would like to control pitch shifting, volume panning, or wah effects with whatever guitar effects systems you're working with, we can hook up an expression pedal to the GT and it'll send the MIDI commands through the system to get to your device, and you can just set up some MIDI modifiers or CC toggle switches from there, and you can control whatever effects you need to. Now if we take a look at the rear panel on the GT22, you're going to notice that there is an extra set of connectors on there. These are remote connectors that will allow you to connect a GT22 to another GT22. If you're someone who's a stage tech for the band that you're working for, this would come in handy for you, because what you have the ability to do is connecting the 22s together so that not only the performer has theirs on stage to control, but it'll also send every single real-time status of what's going on with every single button on the 22. Or in other words, it's a mirror display of what the performer is looking at. So in case that anything goes wrong, or maybe they trip a button, you can go ahead and just fix them and make sure that nothing's ever going wrong. So if I had to give you an honest rating of what I think about the Mastermind GTs, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm gonna give it a 12 out of 10. Now I realize that's not actually possible, but the reason why I say that is because before I had any of these devices, I was running a pedal board that had some stomp effects and a Line 6 Pod HD 500X. It was a good system. I worked with what I had and everything sounded pretty okay. and I ran things the best as I could with a simple workflow. But the problem was I was tap dancing like crazy all the time because certain things, you know, you can only organize so well. With limited capability in that type of setup, there's only so much that one could do to keep everything so efficient, you know, at the press of one button. But now along comes the Mastermind GT. I got one of these and I started working with the Edit app, and every single problem that I had beforehand was not only solved, but the functionality in this thing just goes above and beyond anything I could think of. I've never had the ability to press a button on this thing and at the same time it can call up a preset, change a scene within After Effects, and activate a whammy pedal preset all at the same time. So that way if I wanted to switch from a chorus to a guitar solo, by the press of one button I can automatically have, you know, 4 different effects changed, and then I could simply just place my foot on the expression pedal and go to town with pitch shifting. With the ability to customize every single button, every page, and having the opportunity to organize all of my songs into different set lists and orders whenever I need to is really great. Also, in a matter of under 60 seconds, I can have either of these GTs be set up with different settings files to work for different projects. For example, if I want to use the GT10 to control my B-Rig at quiet practice, I can save my settings to my computer and it'll save as a file, so that way in case I'm running a show for Farsight or doing an acoustic gig, I can just open the settings for quiet practice and then write the settings to the device. And I can do that for every other project I work on, and it does not take more than a minute to upload those settings at all. So thanks to the ability to actually just save these settings like it's another file on your computer, it's really amazing because it also keeps everything safe, and it also gives me a lot of assurance just in case if anything glitches on the device, which almost really never happens. Or perhaps I trip a button or a setting while I'm working on the GT and it results in it doing something funky that I didn't want to happen. Well, as long as I didn't do too much else, I could just reload the settings file and we'll be back to square one like nothing ever went wrong, and I can go from there. So all in all, very incredible device. I've had nothing short but an amazing experience, one that I never expected, and as a live performer, this thing has changed my life. I'm going to be back for tons and tons more videos where I'll be introducing other devices and how we can set them up with the GT. I'm also excited to share some personal experiences that I've had as a performer over the years that have very much to do with why exactly I set things up the way I do in the GTs. And I hope that my experiences can help give you some more insight on how a show can be run with this, and that it allows you to make even better decisions with how you run your show. So we're going to wrap up this video now, but I'd like to tell you that I'll be back next week with another video, and what I'll be doing first is going over a little lesson on MIDI, some of the basic lingo and terminology, and what exactly it all pertains to with the Mastermind GT. I'm doing this because I'd like us all to be on the same page with how this works, so that there's much less confusion. And when I first started out working with MIDI devices, I had a lot of anxiety and just totally scared of whatever I was seeing. It was like trying to do a bunch of calculus equations in math or something like that. So I hope that next week's video will build up some confidence in you in working with MIDI. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this video and you're excited to see what I have to present with the Mastermind GT, please go ahead and like this video and definitely subscribe to my YouTube channel to keep up to date with all upcoming videos. I'm very excited to show you all this stuff. Lastly, if you have any questions about anything, or you'd like to suggest some different MIDI devices to go over that work with the GT, go ahead and leave it in the comments. I'd be happy to address it and help in any way that I can. So wherever you are in the world, have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next week.